Welcome to the Female CEO podcast, hosted by Sephton. You may know her name, but do you know her story? This podcast takes you behind the titles and into the moments that shape some of today's most inspiring women. We explore the paths they've taken, the businesses they've built, and how they've created success on their own terms. Created by the Female CEO Create, Evolve, Overcome, these are honest, human conversations, rooted in real experience. Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the Female CEO podcast. It's great to have you with us today. Today I'm joined by Ali Boyes-Varley, the visionary founder of Roots Wings Tutoring and the creator of the Connected Method. Ali's journey is one of the incredible stories of resilience and radical empathy, having grown up with dyslexia and ADHD in an education system that wasn't built for her. She spent a decade as a specialist teacher in South Africa and the UK, developing the very mythology she wishes she had that existed for her as a child. Ali has built her business from the ground up, with no investment and no safety net, fueled entirely by her own conviction that connection must always come before correction. Beyond the classroom, she is a published author and the founder of 3:30, a walking community raising vital funds for Young Minds mental health charity. Ali, it's an absolute privilege to have you join me today on the Female CEO podcast.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Mark. What a lovely introduction.
Did I do you proud?
You did. You did. Thank
Good.
you.
I always think it's interesting, like an intro, because it's like, obviously, sometimes it's hard for us to toot our own horn. It's so much easier for somebody else to toot their own horn, right?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And you know what? I'll just be honest. It's just sometimes nice to hear somebody put your journey in their words and to actually see it through their eyes. So and it feels good.
I agree with that. I think, obviously people's perception is their reality. I find it very fascinating that someone can consume content or like watch a video or read a book and have an idea of who you are behind the book, behind the pages, behind the lens. And as long as it's not a negative, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? The feedback you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've also got to be open to not negative feedback, but it can be negative. It's all subjective at the end of the day, but, constructive criticism, because that's how you grow, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that my dad taught me was this phrase called "eat the meat, spit out the bones." So that's always stuck with me. You take what's like nourishing, helpful, fattening, expansive, and anything that's there to like choke you, or difficult to swallow, just get rid of that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You had a wise dad.
Yeah. Well, he was wise in that for sure. Ali, you've said that you grew up as the very child you now serve. How does that personal history of sitting in a room not built for you now inform the way that you lead your team and your business today?
That's a really lovely question. I think with great empathy, and everybody that has come into my team is neurodivergent themselves, which I think always adds an extra element of fun, because we have different perspectives on life. And it's also, I think it goes back to that empathy piece, is that you really just have a great understanding that people are just people and we are human. We're human beings. And that's how we show up in business. That's how we show up in life. And it's being a human first. So I think it goes back to that connection before correction, understanding somebody for who they are, understanding what they have to offer, so their point of genius, and actually grabbing onto that potential and riding with it, and optimizing it, not just for your gain, but for their gain. I want everybody who comes into the Roots and Wings world to feel like we've seen their potential and we've untapped it, and that they can grow into the person that they're meant to be.
Yeah, I like that. I love that connection before correction. Reminds me, at the moment, I'm really loving presence over performance. It's the being, the alignment, the oneness, the true to self, the centered, the grounded, the enlightened. It's absolutely delicious in that space.
Yeah, and I think, we live in a world with so much noise, so much information. We can put anything into our phone in ChatGPT or Google, and we can figure it out. We can teach we can teach ourselves things, but it's actually people's stories that we connect to. And I think in business, it's something that I've learned too, is, people buy from people, and and with so much out there, people want to really buy from people that they're aligned with and that they believe in, and that their service is actually going to benefit, benefit them.
Mm. Mm. I'm also dyslexic like yourself, so I'm sure you'll appreciate this. But the other day, I was trying to write the word dyslexic. I mean, how unthoughtful that was. Whoever come up with how to spell dyslexia, it's like, goodness me, we're taking a risk,
Yeah, they are.
aren't they?
I
just
bet
thought
you. I
about it.
bet
It's not one of the
you.
hardest words found.
I bet you spelt it wrong 4 times in a row as well, differently every time.
100%. I was like, how cruel.
Oh
It
my
does make
God.
me laugh.
Yes.
Now, your book and your mythology center on this idea of connection before correction. In
Mm.
an education system that seems to be obsessed with metrics and fixing gaps, why is this psychological shift so revolutionary for a neurodivergent child's success?
Mm. I think the best way to to give an example is to touch back to my own story. And I got all the academic support that I needed when I was a child. Went to 4 different junior schools. I went to child psychologists, um, the educational psychologists that gave me just a formal assessment and a diagnosis. I went to extra phonics lessons. I went to maths lessons, extra maths lessons. I was supported in that way in abundance. But the thing that was lacking for me was the emotional support and the self-regulation. And I think, that's something that I have to be very honest in 2 ways. I had to unwind in therapy later in life. And there was a point in my own journey where I was transitioning from being in the schooling system to being not full-time Roots and Wings, but being in the Roots and Wings space. And I had to apply my own methodology to myself. And that shift from coming back, from leaving the schooling system, my nervous system was, to not exaggerate, but it was in a bit of a shambles, to be honest. And it's realizing that learning is a whole body experience, and that our emotions and our regulation lives, our brain controls everything, but you cannot access the parts of the brain that are so important for learning if you don't access it first through the body, and that comes through self-regulation. And I didn't realize how constantly on I had been And those signals of like anxiety, migraines, waking up in almost in that constant fight or flight that the system has, I think, unbeknownst, like, created, and just through simple things like the environment, busy walls, the neon lights, the itchy uniform that you have to wear. As a person with neurodivergence, your brain is experiencing that sensory world at like 10 times the the normal rate of a neurotypical child. And we don't take into consideration, well, there's more of a conscious shift towards it now, but when I was young, there was no consideration of all those small details in the learning environment, for teachers who are neurodivergent, for children that are neurodivergent, and it really has an impact on our system. So just to go back and round it up all in a bow, I think the education system, when it was built for the industrial era. We were built to be workers. We were built, go to school early, leave school early, because that's what we replicated in our lives. But as the research evolved and we understood the brain more, and we saw how emotional regulation and self-regulation is so vitally important, and how neurodiverse brains actually need those as foundations of learning. And I even think neurotypical adults or people, they can really benefit from fully accessing their brain capacity through self-regulation and nervous system regulation. But we are still in that transition of having a conscious shift from that industrial revolution, from just academics, from just pushing ourselves into this space where we are, we need those things to function as humans on a base level. Because once you do have those base levels of self-regulation, of that internal dialogue of, positivity, I can do it. I think back to myself, and I think about the language of gaps that a label can sometimes put on you. And it's like, oh, well, here's your label of ADHD and dyslexia. This is a whole list of things that you can't do. And here is none of the things that you can do. So it's almost on those levels, like the body is not functioning well in the system. Then you have the language of labels of assessment. Oh, this is what you can't do. And you're left not being able to access those learning parts of your brain where you can just feel untapped and be in flow and be in an environment where you can add so much benefit to in the ways that your brain works. So I mean, it's such a multi-layered question, and I could speak to you about it for ages and many different tangents. But basically, what I am saying is that there is a conscious shift towards it, and there is a base level of self-regulation that we are coming towards and understanding. And there's so many different avenues to education, and I think that's where the gap lies with parents, is that there are other ways to educate your child, and there are alternative routes to education that if you have a neurodivergent child, or if you choose not to subscribe to a purely academic school, then that's okay. And it's, we need to, as educators, inform parents of these opportunities.
Yeah, there's a lot of awareness, isn't there, that's now being brought into neurodiversity. And if you were a child now, Ali, would you be satisfied or encouraged with the level of help there is now? Or would you still feel the need to really be an advocate?
I think there's absolutely a need to be an advocate always, because we're not there fully, but we are on our way to being there. And we do need more awareness, because I think, as you know, there's still a lot of, I speak for myself, you know, I had to spend a lot of time unwinding the belief systems that I had gained in school of what was the right path to go along. You know, do I follow a traditional path where I go into a traditional job and I work a 9 to 5, but I'm not functioning well as a human being because my brain and my body are not built for that? And then I step into an entrepreneurial space and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I can set my own schedule. I can go at my own pace in the morning, and I can do all of the self-regulation things that I need to do. And then I've also got my brain is like holding on to the novelty and the excitement and the fast pacedness of it. So to go back to your question, there's always a need for advocacy for minority groups. But I do believe that there is more opportunity out there, and the louder that we become as educators of these alternative routes to education, and I say alternative routes, just a route that is best for you and your child, the more possibilities we're giving to parents to give their children the best opportunity out there.
Okay. Now, that you've mentioned that one teacher and one school changed the trajectory of your life by looking past the difficulty to find the person underneath, how does the connected method practically systemize that human moment for other teachers and parents?
So systematically, I think I'm going to delve into the science. Yeah. So your brain, you can break it up into 3 parts. So you've got your survival brain, you've got your emotional brain, and you've got your thinking brain. Now, the survival brain is the part where self-regulation, so at your base level of self-regulation activities. So that's, for example, if you might be in hypoarousal or hypoarousal. So if you might be going really slow, or if you might be feeling really anxious, that's where that base level of self-regulation lies. And there's so many different factors. I won't get into it. But if you don't have that base level of self-regulation, then your emotional brain basically goes into override and overload. So you get emotionally flooded. So that's where you start to believe and have those belief systems instilled in yourself that you have limitations, that you can't do it, that you might be a problem, that you might be difficult, because that's also the language that has been surrounded with neurodiversity within schools, is that it's been, we are the children in schools that might be kicking off a little bit sometimes, and that's a moment for a teacher to say, hey, wait, hold on a minute. Behavior is actually communication, and this child might not be not trying or difficult. This child might be saying, hey, I'm struggling within this system and I need some help. Then, if you're emotionally flooded, the thinking part of your brain, with all your executive functions lie and all your learning possibilities it goes offline, and you're not accessing that part of the brain. So systematically, what parents and teachers we can do, and applying the methodology like that, is start with the base level of self-regulation. Practical activities that get you into that optimal zone of learning. We need to change the language around what an ADHD brain or a dyslexic brain can do, and we need to use neuroaffirming language around it. So instead of looking at what might be a limitation, it's like, oh, what's a possibility? So instead of saying, okay, well, your fast brain doesn't suit the classroom and we can't manage it, so you're the problem. It's like, oh no, okay, well, actually your fast brain is amazing and it can swap ideas and it's highly creative. So it's swapping that language. And then I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 times, because I've seen it time and time again with the families that have come through Roots and Wings, with the children that we have worked with, that's when that learning brain comes online. And I'm a huge advocate for learning being displayed in or presented in a play-based manner, because that's how learning becomes sticky. And to go back to the brain science about it, it's you've got your hippocampus, which is where your memory is, and that's your learning part of the brain, and that stores the learning. And if you're making it memorable with your amygdala, so if it's positive, that's the emotional part of the brain. So if it's positive, it's exciting, you enjoy it, you're making the learning journey enjoyable and exciting, and you're going to want to engage with it. So I think that systematic way of learning, going through, and that's actually, I've just described my methodology, is I believe the secret sauce to a successful neurodivergent education. Oh, and the last thing I have to say is relationships are the fundamental behind everything at the bottom. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. It's just positive relationships with parents, with teachers, with if a child feels safe, then they are going to be willing to learn and to let their guard down.
Yeah, and I would probably add to it the positive relationship with self, because the more that, even I've been on that journey of, I feel like, I think probably everybody on the planet actually does want to feel safe. And I feel like it probably manifests differently for different people, both for male and female, let alone all the other different spectrums of thought process there. But I feel like finding safety in yourself is really key. And I love when you were talking about like language. I'd never heard of neuroaffirming language before, so I really enjoyed hearing your explanation of that, because I do think that the way it's not just what we say, but how we say it. I think for people that actually need that safety, I've noticed even for me, like the tone of what's articulated to me really has quite an impact on whether I perceive it as a threat or actually perceive it as an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the brain doesn't know any different between a real threat and a perceived threat at the end of the day. And I guess you can also just say it, when somebody says something kind to you, or when you're saying something kind to yourself, you automatically have more motivation to do it, compared to when you are consistently saying a negative thing to yourself, like, I can't do it, I can't. So it's really having that flexible mindset and explicitly teaching that in schools, I believe. I think that's one element that I think schools could really improve on. And I know that there is a movement towards having a social and emotional curriculum in place from September 2026, is having a structured social and emotional curriculum that explicitly teaches these mindset tools, these coaching tools that we almost learn only in the therapy rooms later in life. And I think because the way of the world is also changing so rapidly, that those critical thinking skills, emotional intelligence skills, they're going to be highly regarded in 18 years' time, of when our primary age children are going to be walking into the workforce. And not just that, I think it will genuinely, and maybe it's the idealist in me, but I think a kinder world too, because we'll be more self-aware.
Yeah, I think it's really, really fascinating topic. And you've spoken about how neurodivergent people often let their gap define them. How did you apply your own mythology to yourself to move from seeing your ADHD and dyslexia as a deficit to then really seeing them as your greatest competitive advantage?
Yeah, it was an interesting time in my life that it all came to an head. Uh, and it was a moment when there was a lot going on in my life, and you know, I I kind of I moved back home with my parents um on multiple levels. I was bootstrapping the business, so I decided to make that call to say, okay, I'm going to spend less time actually making money and more time creating. But also on a personal level, um, I needed to really dedicate time to getting to know myself, and regulating my emotions, um, and learning how my brain worked. So I spent about 18 months um, living in the deep, dark countryside, which was lovely. I took time to walk the Camino as well. And I was in a coaching container. And I will never forget this moment that the coach turned to me and he said, how are you using your ADHD and your dyslexic label to your advantage? Like, how does it serve you? What is it doing for you? And I'd never been asked that question. I was like, okay, and at this point I'd done the work, eh? Like I've done the cold water regulations. Eating the healthy meals. I'm like, doing all the affirmations every day and still feeling like a bit stuck. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm not actually quite sure. And then I said, oh, well, it keeps me safe, because there is a point as an adult that you have the agency because the brain is malleable. It can change. Like, we can change the neural pathways and the belief systems that we have. And you get to a point as an adult where you're like, well, this is no longer serving me. But why has it served me? Well, it's kept me safe. It's kept me small. And small is what my nervous system has always remembered from when I was younger. And how does it serve me? Well, I don't have to take more responsibility. I don't have to put in the extra work to grow my business and scale my business to the level that I want to scale it to. But deep down, I really actually want to. So I was like, well, this no longer serves me. And he said, that's exactly it. That illusion of safety, that is stopping you from going to your next level, and that's stopping you from believing in yourself. And I think we spoke about it earlier about, having that confidence and owning it, especially as a female founder. We all have a story that is valid, that is beautiful, that somebody else can learn for. And playing it small just doesn't, as a woman particularly, I'm very passionate about this, it just doesn't serve anyone. So the brighter your light can shine, the more that you can offer, the more that your story can inspire somebody. I say it, scream it from the rooftop. So that was the changing shift for me. But I will definitely say, in the terms of the way that I run my business and the way that I run my life now with neurodiversity and being a female, is that I don't run my business like a man. Like, I'm not going to, and I think it's beautiful. I think the way the male brain works and the way the male brain energy, it's beautiful. You know, you go, you're on, but we are flowy beings as women. You know, we are a different woman every month. We might be a different woman every day, and I used to feel so shameful about that, but now I use it to my advantage. Now I plan my schedule around my cycle, and I tap into my femininity, my creativity, and I make sure that I am regulated. And that is my baseline. And the moment that my regulation, so the moment that I am not feeling centered, or I'm feeling, then I will stop. And I'll say, hey, I'm going to take a moment or two, and then I'm going to come back, because it's not going to benefit me. It's not going to benefit my team. It's not going to benefit the children that I work with if I'm showing up in a dysregulated space.
Mm. Very, very beautiful. Um, when I heard the word Camino, that's one of the things that I really want to do. When I watched the film The Way with Martin Sheen, have you seen that film?
Oh my gosh, I watched it like 5 times. And I watched it with my parents before I went on the Camino. It was actually it was so cute. Both my parents called me down. They were like, "Let's watch The Way before you walk on the Camino," and it was so lovely. Is there a particular route that you wanted to do on the Camino, or?
No, I mean, I just was captivated by that film. I wrote
Mm.
about it in my second book, Plot Twist. It definitely became a film that really gripped me, both because of the fact that, obviously, if people haven't watched it, it definitely should. I love the idea that everybody was lost, like internally, and yet how that beautiful journey actually helped them find themselves and each other. I mean, I think the premise of that was just so like beautiful, and the caption of that is that we don't live a life, we choose one. And I
Mm.
just love that idea. Yeah. So I know that in your book, 3:30, you lead
Mm.
Camino pilgrimages and monthly walks for mental health. What do you
Mm.
feel is the link between that physical movement in the countryside and the mental resilience required to run a disruptive educational brand?
I mean, I love that. First of all, I think, to speak on the regulation the part, being out in
Mm,
nature. I mean, I partner with a forest school, and I still do work with a forest school too. Is nature just does its thing. You just have to sit in nature, and it really, really has an impact on your nervous system. So taking the lessons from nature of stillness, of growth, that is regulation within itself. I think the idea of community, and going back to my pilgrimage, um, was that it was the people along the way that I met. And if I compare that to a startup journey, a lot of this time, when I founded the business, I was doing it as a solo entrepreneur. And the interesting thing that I learned about being solo is that it can actually be a trauma response, that you feel like you have to do it all by yourself. Um, and actually leaning on people and asking for help, or just sharing your journey with like-minded people in a community, that is the core of resilience, like knowing that you don't have to do it alone. And I think just the mental fortitude of, wait, I mean, there's something about entrepreneurship, and it's what comes up for me is like, every day you were walking 30 kilometers. By the end of that day, your feet were sore, your legs were sore, like, your body was broken. But the next day you'd get up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning and you do it all again because you just love it. And I love that element about entrepreneurs. Like, I have not come past an entrepreneur yet that isn't deeply passionate or absolutely is obsessed with what they do. And I think that's the mark of a successful person, is when they are deeply obsessed with their topic, with what they're trying to change in the world, or whatever mission they're on. And that's definitely that piece. Like, your body's broken, but you do it because you love it, and you're mad enough to wake up every single day and walk 30 kilometers over and over and over again.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm tapping into movies now. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you've come across a film called Seabiscuit,
Oh my
about
God,
a
what am I
racehorse.
saying?
Oh, on your favorite. So
Yeah.
it reminded me of when it says it's better to break a man's leg than to break his heart. So it reminds me
Yeah.
of that. The fact that your body is broken, but your heart, your spirit lives for that,
Yeah.
enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. I watched Seabiscuit on Unrelated Road in my childhood, and I don't know if it's an ADHD trait, but you watch a video, like a movie, 100 times. And Seabiscuit was one of those films that you watch over and over again. So thank you for sharing that.
No, it's just beautiful because it's like little things just really resonate with me with what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, both of those movies I've mentioned, I've watched them many times, and they're really relatable. I love the hidden meanings behind it. It works beautifully with the things that we've talked about, Ali. Now,
Mm.
we've only got a couple of moments left. Time's flown. Would love to know how people can find out more about you and your business, and feel free to share, something intuitively or something that you really kind of want to leave us with as we bring this into land.
Wonderful. So where you can find us, I mean, in the obvious practical places on our website, rootswings.education. You can find us on Instagram, Roots and Wings Edu. You can find us on Facebook and TikTok, and those are where you can find us virtually online, as well as LinkedIn. We are on the precipice of relaunching Roots and Wings in all its in its new level glory. And what that looks like is that we are launching 3 new services in conjunction with some wonderful partners, education partners, and our offerings have become more in depth, and we offer one-to-one as tutoring support, we home education support, flexi schooling support. But we've also got our emotional resilience products, which are about to launch, and that starts. I'm not going to give too much away with that because there's so much exciting things coming in the future in December. But it starts with the 12 children's books that we have written and illustrated, and you can meet our beautiful animal characters that you can see online. I'm also launching my book, Connection Before Correction. So I'm very excited about that, and that will be available online quite soon in December. So there's lots of things going on behind the scenes. And also we walk once a month in the Kent countryside, and the walk is always free. And you can find us on Instagram, and we have a WhatsApp group, and you can follow the link on our Instagram bio to join the WhatsApp group. Always free. We walk in the countryside, no agenda, just a space to be in nature, enjoy, and connect with like-minded people. And the thing that I would really love for everybody to land this and to leave you with, and I think it will go back to that connection before correction, and take a moment to really connect with yourself and know that what you have to offer in this world is beautiful, and go for it. Go for it. Don't let things hold you back, because people need what you have to offer. And the moment that you give a woman a voice or a microphone, she doesn't stop talking.
Ali, really enjoyed this interview with you. Thank you for joining me on today's Female CEO podcast.
Thank you so much, Mark.
You've been listening to the Female CEO podcast, created by the Female CEO Create, Evolve, Overcome. This podcast amplifies women's voices, stories, and lived experience. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our YouTube channel, and discover more at thefemaleceo.com.